If you live on the Gulf Coast, you know how to weather a hurricane. If you make your home in the Midwest, you accept tornadoes as a given. In much the same way, brush fires are just a part of life here in California, and if you grew up here, chances are that you've had some personal experience with them. I didn't pay much attention to the danger until 1967, when a huge brush fire swept through the foothills of Simi Valley, coming within a few miles of my home. I was 14 years old and had just started high school. Seasonal changes in Southern California were subtle. Summer seemed to linger long past its time. Back-to-school ads on TV and in magazines featured youngsters clad in coats and sweaters. But in Simi Valley, suitable school attire didn't change much as the autumn ripened. If school dress codes had permitted shorts, many of us would have worn them. During my first month at Simi Valley High School, temperatures remained hot, and in the second week of October, a thick pall of smog descended on downtown Los Angeles. A page-one story in the Los Angeles Times dated October 14th teased readers with the headline, "Shift in wind may bring relief from week's smog siege." As it turned out, change was indeed in the wind, and that headline soon proved ironic. Highs at Civic Center for the following day were forecast to reach 92 degrees. Overnight, the winds shifted to the northeast. By morning, a strong Santa Ana condition brought sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, with gusts approaching 75 miles per hour across the face of foothills in the San Fernando Valley. About 8:30 Sunday morning, a fire broke out about a mile west of Devonshire Street and Topanga Canyon Boulevard. Driven by the wind, the brush fire quickly made its way up the slopes of the hills west of Chatsworth. A plume of thick brown smoke was soon visible from Simi Valley. My grandmother noticed it first as my mother drove us to church. "Look at the dust cloud," she said, pointing toward the hills as my mother made her way eastbound on Royal Avenue. "That looks more like smoke to me," my mother said. "There must be a fire." "That's up near Rocketdyne," I said, scooting forward in the back seat to get a better look through the windshield. "I'm glad your daddy is home today," my mother said as she pulled the car into the church driveway. We returned from church to find my stepfather busy in the garage. I was surprised that my parents seemed so unconcerned about this inferno blazing in full view of our house. After changing clothes, my mother made a grocery list and headed off to the market with my grandmother. The pass road was closed to through traffic, and with the Simi Freeway still months from completion, this effectively cut off the eastern portal to the valley. Firefighting crews from as far as 200 miles away converged on the blaze, which continued to grow. As the afternoon unfolded, other fires broke out nearby, a few of them clearly set by local firebugs. A blaze broke out in the foothills south of Santa Susana, threatening the Brandeis camp and portions of the Rocketdyne facility. About 1:30, I stepped outside to have another look at the smoke. I found several neighbors gathered on the sidewalk. Someone had brought out a telescope on a tripod, and we all took turns getting a closer look at the blaze. When I looked through the eyepiece, I could see towering flames on the crest of the hill. Viewed from my street, the smoke rose in towering curtains that raked across the entire southern horizon. By evening, the Chatsworth Reservoir fire had merged with the smaller blaze south of Santa Susana. Driven by the relentless Santa Ana winds, the flames licked across the tinder-dry foothills on into the night. The TV news on Monday morning was much the same. Overnight, the blaze had jumped the Albertson Motorway, a fire access road near Simi Peak, and a wall of flames continued its march toward Thousand Oaks. With so much drama unfolding around me, the prospect of school seemed almost unfair, but with winds pushing the fire down the far side of the southern foothills, There was no reason to cancel classes. I trudged off, half hoping that the school bus wouldn't show up. Margaret was right on time. The familiar routine of my classes helped keep my mind off the fire, but during passing periods I surveyed the southern foothills warily. Although the fire lines had shifted to the southwest, smaller plumes of smoke could still be seen in the distance. Simi Valley seemed out of danger, but in some nearby communities, firefighters were still hard at work. The blaze burned through hidden hills, clear to the Ventura Freeway, which closed to traffic for more than an hour as fire crews battled the flames. Lingering winds continued to push the fire down the backside of the hills toward Thousand Oaks, but in the afternoon, crews successfully established fire breaks that contained the flames at Skeleton Canyon. Later in the day, phone company officials asked that only emergency calls be made in and out of Simi. The local phone lines had become overloaded after the fire damaged a trunk line connecting Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Although the TV stations and the major newspapers in Los Angeles reported on the brush fire from a broad perspective, Simi residents had to wait for community-level coverage. On Wednesday, our bi-weekly newspaper ran photos of the local damage. I arrived home from school that afternoon to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table reading the Enterprise. "Look at these pictures, Ronnie. Did you know the field next to your school burned?" She folded the newspaper and pushed it toward me across the table. I saw a photo of an oak tree that had survived the flames. According to the caption, on Sunday afternoon, a small blaze described later as a weed fire erupted in the field south of the campus and briefly threatened the Oak Crest subdivision before being suppressed. In another article, the newspaper reported the fire's only casualty, an 80-year-old woman known as a local historian. Ironically, it was not the fire that killed her. She was involved in a traffic accident Sunday morning, barely a mile from where we sat in church. By that hour, firefighting crews throughout the county were already mobilizing as fire trucks converged on the Santa Susana foothills. At 10:33 a.m., a pumper truck heading eastbound on Los Angeles Avenue approached Sycamore Drive, siren blaring and lights flashing. A car heading north on Sycamore collided with the fire truck, deflecting it into oncoming lanes. Seconds later, a westbound car, driven by Janet Scott Cameron, plowed into the fire truck, killing her. By the time tires stopped spinning, 6 vehicles had crashed in a chain reaction pileup. Injured drivers and passengers were rushed to the Simi Adventist Hospital. By Thursday, most of the fires had been contained or extinguished, and the local TV stations turned their focus to other news. Smaller local newspapers continued to publish details of the brush fires for several days. The magnitude of the damage was hard for me to imagine. Fires had destroyed 34 homes and charred more than 55,000 acres in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. The Simi Thousand Oaks fire alone had charred 17,000 acres. Blazes were reported in Port Hueneme, Timber Canyon, Los Padres National Forest, Tapo Canyon, Sespe Ranch, Santa Paula, Las Yajas Canyon, and the Whittier foothills. Officials reported that some fires were intentionally set, and police did their best to track down the individuals responsible. Ventura County Fire Chief B.B. Bill Haggard reported that battling the brush fires had cost more than 231,000 man-hours, and that these costs already exceeded the department's reserve funds for the year. Fire crews had come from as far away as San Diego and Kern counties.